I am calling to order the regular meeting of the Engineering and Operations Committee and a special meeting of the West Basin Board of Directors. And it is 4:02 p.m. on Wednesday, April 16th. So can we have a determination of a forum, Mr. General Manager?
Mr. Assistant General Manager, certainly Chair Alvarez. Director Tommy Favai. Here. Chair Desi Alvarez.
Here.
President Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Donald Deere. Here. Director Scott Houston. Chair Alvarez, we have a quorum.
Thank you. So moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have not received any requests to speak. And Director, while we have not received any requests for public comment though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually, if there is any member of the public that would like to speak, please indicate so now by raising your hand virtually. Mr. Chairman, we have no hands raised.
Thank you. So we will move on to presentations. I don't believe there are any. Are there?
There are no presentations today.
Okay, we will move on to the action calendar and Director Cave does have a important appointment that he needs to drive all the way out to Pomona this evening. So he has all my sympathy. So we'll try to get to the agenda as quickly as possible. And would appreciate your cooperation with that. Okay, with that, we will go to action item 5A, extension of the microbiological analytical reporting and courier services. Mr. Assistant General Manager.
Chair Alvarez, today's presentation, we have Mitchell McNearly, Water Quality and Environmental Compliance Analyst 1. I would note before handing it over to Mitchell that there will be a slight revision to the recommendation that he reads, but for the most part, it's consistent. So we'll point that out and make the correction before the board. With that, Mitchell.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board. I'm here today to present the action item on page 4 of your packet to extend the agreement for microbiological analytical reporting and courier services. Microbiological monitoring is required to satisfy the conditions of 2 permits, the advanced treated barrier permit and the tertiary treated Title 22 recycled water permit. The permits are issued by the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board and require these analyses to be performed by a laboratory with E-Lab certification. Permit conditions include daily, weekly, and quarterly sampling for microbiological analyses. Both of the barrier and Title 22 permits require daily grab samples of total coliform to demonstrate that the recycled water produced has been adequately disinfected. Additionally, microbiology samples are also collected for the Title 22 distribution system and 11 groundwater monitoring wells. The analyses are performed using standard methods, 9221 multiple tube fermentation technique with a 2 mpm per 100 milliliter detection limit and have a short holding time of 8 hours. This means that samples need to be collected, processed, delivered, and begin analysis within 8 hours, or the test results are invalid and can result in a violation. If total coliform is detected and confirmed in a sample, further analysis for fecal coliform and E. coli are performed to determine a possible source of bacteria. In addition, process control, microbiological sampling, and analyses for heterotrophic plate count using standard method 9251B are important performance indicators to gauge the effectiveness of the treatment
Your
process.
grandmother.
Eurofins and Analytical is the current provider of the microbiological contract, which expires on June 30th, 2025. Eurofins has agreed to extend their microbiological contract for an additional 6 months under the existing pricing terms. Extending this contract to the end of December 2025 will allow for the transition to the new O&M contract and onboarding of the new contract operator. Details on Eurofins pricing can be found on page 6. You will notice in this memo, we only included the additional amount The new recommendation will include the original contract amount plus the new contract amount and will be reflected in the full board memo next week. I will now read the corrected recommendation. That the board authorizes the general manager to extend agreement A W3143 with Eurofins Analytical LLC for microbiological analytical reporting and courier services for 6 additional months through December 31st, 2025, and under the same pricing band as the original agreement in the amount of $72,510 plus a 10% contingency for a total contract amount $239,057.50. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Director Fave, do you have any questions?
No, none at this time.
Director Lear?
No.
President Gray, do you have any comments? Question? Okay. So this is just really the extension of the contract. You operators who comes on board, they're gonna be assuming 100% of the responsibility for all of the lab work.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Chair Alvarez, if I could add that while that new contract operating period will begin September 1st, this will allow us to bridge that gap until September, as well as allow for some time for them to bring on their own contract.
So, but we expect by the end of the year, if this is through December 31st, that they will then be, beginning January 1, they will be on board.
Absolutely.
And that means. All right, Director Fave, if you don't have any, additional comments, we will move this to the board.
Yeah, so moved for approval to be on the next board meeting.
All right, so moving on to the next item, 5B, award of the Progressive Design Build contract for pre-construction services for the DCS replacement project. So, Mr. Assistant General Manager, would you like to introduce that project?
Certainly, Chair Alvarez, as you're well aware, this has been a long time coming. Staff is prepared to present a selection for the Progressive Design Build that represents the first PD project that West Basin has entered into. Today, we have the engineering department's John Venner and engineer 2 presenting the item.
Thanks, Eric. Good afternoon, directors. I'm here presenting item 5B on the agenda that starts on packet page 7. If you remember, staff brought this item to the committee as an information item last month, while staff wrapped up negotiations with the selected Progressive Design Build entity, PDBE. I have to say now that those negotiations have concluded, and so we're returning today with the action item. So as I said, staff report begins on packet 7, but we'll be beginning today with the presentation, which starts on packet page 18. Slide, please. Not great to see on there, but I know we have limited time today. I'll just say that this slide shows the many times this project has been presented to the committee and board in the last 5 years. Today, we are here for the recommended award of a contract for the Progressive Design Build entity, or PDBE. Slide, please. Because we have a new director on the committee, I just wanted to give a brief reminder of the background to this decision. So DCS stands for Distributed Control System. You may also hear SCADA, which is Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. Our system is a hybrid of these two. The district, we commonly refer to it as the DCS. It's a control system that's spread across all of our treatment plants, controls every process from an individual valve up to an entire site. At the lowest levels on the graphic you see on the right are the PLCs that control individual process equipment, such as pumps and motors. And then at the highest level is the data highway, which is a network that can. In between those two, you have our controllers and servers, which combine to control the various elements of our plants and store information. These are all accessed by operators of workstations, and these are the computers you see in your plant control rooms and out in the field. And all of these systems are connected via fiber optic cables within our. So this slide gives an overview of the main issues with the district's control system. The vast majority of it is obsolete, has limited support, and has the potential to result in full recycled water production shutdowns. The last major update to this system was in 2009, with some critical components remaining in operation since 1995. Staff have had to resort to eBay and other sites for replacement components, and it's also proven very difficult to find contractors who are able or willing to work on a system this old. So this presents a huge operational risk as well as cybersecurity and safety concerns. However, replacing the entire control system would be a huge task, and as we don't yet know which processes will be required in the future, staff are advising against a full replacement at this stage. Instead, you can see here what we've done is separated the control system replacement project into two sections. The current project aims to replace the backbone systems in the top half of this graphic, and those account for approximately 40% of the control system, but 80% of the risk. So this backbone of our control system will be required no matter which future direction the district takes. And once this backbone system is replaced, staff will investigate whether the further replacement of the process controls at the bottom of the graphic would be beneficial. Next slide, please. So back in February of last year, West Basin staff elected to pursue a progressive design build approach to this project. This effectively means that we'll have a single contractor team throughout the system selection, design, and installation. There are a few technicalities shown here that make the approach well suited for this project. I'm happy to come back to them later if there's any questions. In the interest of time, I'll just say this backbone replacement project is estimated to cost up to $12 million all in, and completion is estimated in around 2 to 3 years' time. Next slide, please. Here we can see an overview of the scope. So progressive design build projects are split into two phases. You've got the pre-construction phase there and the construction phase. The recommendation today is to award a contract for the pre-construction phase for $2.1 million. The progressive design build entity, the PDBE, will proceed through those first 5 tasks shown there over the next 18 months, and that will culminate in the presentation of a GMP, or a guaranteed maximum price proposal, which will be a maximum proposed cost for that construction phase. Once the GMP is presented, staff will bring it back to the board for approval, and if approved, the contract will then be amended to add in the new guaranteed maximum price and will enter the construction phase of the project. I won't go through every task here, but task 3 there is worth mentioning. It's critical that we select a control system that will best serve the district for potentially decades to come. So after the PDBE has familiarized themselves with our system and fully documented every element in the field, they will develop a long list of at least 10 different systems that could meet the district needs. Using the agreed upon evaluation methods that will agree with them, the design builder will then whittle this 10 system long list down to a short list of at least 3 systems that will then be fully vetted and evaluated. The proposed design build team are planning on splitting their team into 3 groups, with each group representing and championing a different system. This will ensure that the final selection is genuinely competitive and not simply based on which vendor has the best marketing team. So while the design builder will present their recommendation, the district will make the ultimate decision on which system is selected. And staff anticipates bringing that recommended system before the board around November this year, towards the end of this calendar year. This system selection is critical to the success of the project, as the design, standards, governance documents, and guaranteed maximum price proposal will all be based around the selected system. Next slide, please. Here you can see our current estimated timeline for the project. So last year we onboarded Arcadis, our owner's advisor, who developed the procurement documentation and were heavily involved in the evaluation process. They'll be with us throughout the project, serving in a staff augmentation role to provide additional support during the design and contract decisions. We're aiming to onboard this design builder prior to the final quarter of this fiscal year, and staff are aiming to bring that GMP back to the board around the end of the 2025-2026 fiscal year. If approved, staff hopes to begin construction at the start of the 2026-2027 fiscal year and finish it around the end of that year, fiscal year. Overall, we estimate the project will take around 28 months to complete once the design build is on. So this slide details some of the key points of the PDBE contract. I mentioned last month that staff were still negotiating the final contract with the recommended PDBE. I'm happy to say that we're now in agreement on a draft contract. We intend to attach that draft contract to the board agenda for this item. So I won't spend any more time here for now, but I'm happy to come back to it if there are any questions about the contract. Next slide, please. This slide gives a graphical breakdown of how the overall project cost has been estimated. I know there's been a little bit of confusion about it in the past, so I'll put these slides in. You can see here that we estimate spending approximately $600,000 on West Basin and contract operator labor over the next couple of years. Our owner's advisor contract is in place with Arcadis, and the budget is $670,000. Staff today are recommending the award for pre-construction work to Tetra Tech for a total not to exceed $2,120,000. And as we approach the construction phase, the district will go out to bid for construction management services, which we estimate to be around $500,000. And then finally, we have that GMP, the guaranteed maximum price for construction. Staff is currently estimating this to being between $7 and $9 million for this construction phase, and that estimate will narrow as we proceed throughout the pre-construction phase. So in total, that brings us to the staff estimate of between $10 and $12 million over the next few years. Next slide, please. This slide zooms into the GMP breakdown contract documents. Gets pretty complicated. I know we're short for time here, so I can move past this for now. But the main thing to note here is that the costs will be looking at direct and subcontractor costs on an open book level. That'll be actual in the field construction costs and direct procurement. And then a profit margin or overhead profit margin of 10% will be applied to that by the PDBE. And then there will be a significant amount of professional services in the construction phase of this project, unlike a normal construction project, because there's a significant amount of programming and project management in the construction phase. So those will be using the hourly rates from the pre-construction phase. And then we have two contingency buckets there. There will be contingency on the PDBE side and contingency on the district side. And those contingency buckets will be based off of the risk assessment that will be conducted throughout the project. Those risks will be quantified and then put into the contingencies. And if those risks are realized, money will be taken from the contingency to deal with them. And then there's allowances at the end. So these are pre-agreed potential work tasks. So a potential here could be if we wanted to extend this control system out to our distribution network, we would effectively pre-negotiate a set cost for that work with the Progressive Design Build entity. And then if during the construction phase we wanted to actually work, then we would pay that fixed cost. But that's something if we don't actualize the work, we wouldn't pay that fixed cost. So this would be the breakdown of that guaranteed maximum price, which would be presented to the board in around the end of next fiscal year. Next slide, please. So the district issued the Progressive Design Build RFP last December. We received 4 proposals in February. The proposals were evaluated and we held interviews throughout March. There's an evaluation panel that consisted of district staff, the district's owner's advisor, and an external evaluator from the Water Replenishment District. As you can see from the table here, the clear winner was Tetra Tech, who's based out of Pasadena, and they proposed a team consisting of themselves, their subsidiary Enterprise Automation, RoverSys, and Southern Contracting. The decision was unanimous across the evaluation team in both the proposal review and the interview phases. Tetra Tech proposed a pre-construction phase cost that was the second lowest with a reasonable hourly rate, which is good as we will be using that for any professional services in the construction phase as well. Next slide, please. The evaluation team are very confident in Tetra Tech's team and proposed plan. As I mentioned, the decision was unanimous, and that's for a few very good reasons. While Tetra Tech is the primary entity, the bulk of the work will be undertaken by their subsidiary company, Enterprise Automation, with RoverSys providing automation support and Southern Contracting undertaking the boots on the ground electrical work. It's important to note here that Southern Contracting are a member of IBEW Local 569. The proposed team have delivered over 3,500 DCS and SCADA projects. They are certified experts in all of the major systems out there, in some cases being one of only a handful of firms holding the highest level certifications. They are fully system agnostic integrators. So either Enterprise, RoverSys, or both are some of the biggest US integrators for many of the major control systems. RoverSys, for example, has now installed more Rockwell systems than Rockwell have themselves. Due to this, the team holds a significant amount of leverage over these vendors, which will benefit West Basin as it ensures that the district is not held hostage by any vendor we select. There's more reasons listed here, but I'll keep moving in the interest of time. Next slide, please. This slide is just a summary of some of the expertise that the proposed team holds. So as you can see, they have both the breadth and depth of knowledge across the potential systems available to the district. This ensures that they are one of the few very truly system agnostic teams out there, as they can design and install pretty much whichever system the district selects, which gives staff the freedom to pick that system. Next slide, please. And then this is a list of similar projects to ours the proposed team has undertaken with similar agencies. To clarify here, these are projects that the actual proposed team members have worked on, not just the company as a whole. So these are key projects that the key personnel have worked on. So this experience was head and shoulders above the other respondents. Next slide, please. And on to the last couple of slides here, beginning with project finances. We've seen this finance slide every time I present on this project, so I won't take too long on it. But the main takeaway is that we're well under budget this fiscal year. That's mostly due to staff's reevaluation of the project schedule once we realized how long it would take to create that procurement documentation for the PDB. Staff's original schedule had the design build RFP being posted at the end of or the start of this current fiscal year instead of halfway through. We do still anticipate a total cost of up to $12 million for this backbone replacement, but it will now likely be expended across the next few fiscal years. And staff is still recommending not to proceed with the higher cost phase 2 of this replacement project. That's the process controls out in the field. And we'll reevaluate the need for this project once we finish this backbone replacement, so in around 2027. Next slide, please. This is our penultimate slide, staff's next steps. Staff intends to regularly provide updates to the board, and those updates will include updated schedules and cost estimates as we narrow the design and therefore the construction cost estimate between now and next summer. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll read the recommendation. So staff recommends that the board authorizes the general manager to enter into an agreement with Tetra Tech for for progressive design build reconstruction services on the DCS replacement project phase 1 in the amount for a total of $2,122,411 with a 10% contingency of $202,241 for a total not to exceed of $2,334,682. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Fave, any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair Alvarez. I have a couple questions. And this is more like a concern when it comes to like, you know, I know you mentioned Tetra Tech is the number one bidder on this. But when it comes to like, you know, the local, you know, meeting those local businesses and local contractors, is that, because I didn't see a breakdown of the local businesses and stuff that's in, yeah, are they meeting those numbers when it comes to local businesses?
Yeah, it's on packet page 17. So you can see here, this is the score breakdown. So you can see there the third line from the bottom, third row from the bottom is small and local business designation. So they get 3 points if they are considered a small business and they have the certification, 3 points if they're considered a local business, and then they get an additional 1 point if they have a sub that is a small or local business. So you can see here the Tetra Tech got 3 points. They're deemed a local business.
Got it.
Director Favai, if I might add that it's important to note that our small and local business does not require them to achieve a specific inclusion of small and local business, but rather it's a point-based evaluation that gives them an incentive to use them. So they get extra credit or extra points in the evaluation if they do use small and local businesses.
Okay, and then, no, and my last comments would be, I think this project is well needed, you know, when it comes to our backbone of our systems. And moving forward with this project, you know, I think it's just, you know, what the district needs. You know, so that's all I have.
Director Neal,
I agree with Tommy.
that was easy. President Gray, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
I have a question or clarification. So go to page 26. And you mentioned that you're gonna come back after the pre-construction phase here. And we're gonna retain a construction manager.
Yes, intention.
So that's separate than the owner's engineer?
Correct. Initially, those were going to be the same contract.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There could be a request to separate those. The owner's agent would not be precluded from bidding on the construction management, so there is potential that it's the same.
Okay, but that will come back then as a separate one, and that will come at the end of the pre-construction phase when you would be bringing back the construction phase. All right,
Ideally, we'd bring it back slightly before so they can review the GMP as well. Just make sure that there's a construction analysis.
and just to remind me, the GMP price is gonna be separate. In other words, we're gonna pay for the pre-construction for Tetra Tech to do all the design work, make the recommendations for what their installation's gonna be, et cetera. And then they will be paid a GMP fee for the actual installation and modifications and upgrade to the DCS.
Yes. If we agree the GMP with.
And that's estimated right now, 7 to 9 million. Okay. So, go ahead, Director.
I have one last recommendation. If we decide to move it to the board, to the full board, can you give us like a breakdown, like, you know, the timeline of like months and the year of pre-construction costs, construction management, and then also the timeline of when construction starts and ends? Like
Yeah.
what month, what date? You know, I think that'd be good, you know, whatever the best estimate that you can give when it comes to, you know, those items.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, you know,
Yeah,
like a chart that kind of gives a breakdown of that.
yeah, we have a rough estimate on slide 24, like at page 24. But we can make that more detailed. That's just in quarters.
Oh, got you. Yeah, I think more in detail would be good. Oh, that's it, Chair Alvarez.
Chair Alvarez, if I might also add that under the progressive design build project delivery method, not only will the board have an opportunity to review that guaranteed maximum price before making the move to award it and move forward. If we cannot come to terms with the contractor based on their design through this PDB process, we do have the option of taking that design and putting it out to the market and allowing them to go through a bid process just to make sure that we're getting the best price.
And how long would that process be?
The same as our current process. I mean, it would add months to the procurement of a new contractor to deliver that design, but it is an off-ramp that if we're just not coming to agreement with the costing that they have developed for the guaranteed maximum price.
Would it be like a progressive timeline? Like the progressive DB that went out? Would that be-
Yeah. Yeah, this is, so it's a key part of the progressive design build process, and that's why we chose it. That it allows us to have that off ramp around the 60% design. So as Eric said, if we aren't coming to an agreement at that GMP stage, we can decide to take everything they've done so far, because we've paid for it at that point. We can take it and bid it out or decide whatever we want to do with that at that stage.
So that would probably take about 3 additional months, as opposed to just moving them forward to the actual construction. But that brings up one question. If we decided to part ways and put it out to bid, will they have been responsible for producing the bid documents, or is that something that you're gonna come back and say we have to produce bid documents?
We would be responsible for producing the bid documents. I don't think we could expect the PDB to produce them themselves. However, it's probably something we add to the scope of Arcadis, our owner's advisor. At that time, they're experienced in doing that.
Thank you, that much. All right,
Okay.
so I shouldn't see any additional, we need help now putting together the bid document. We're gonna have basically a pretty complete set of specs. It's just a matter of putting on that front end stuff. And if you guys can't do it, you'll have. All right, so without any comments, we'll move it forward. Okay. So moving on to item 5C, the amendment to the construction management agreement for the Palos Verdes extension project. Mr. Assistant General Manager, please introduce yourself.
Chair Alvarez, today we have Veronica Govea, Engineering Supervisor, to present on this topic of an amendment to the CM contract for the PV extension project. I would say that Veronica has a wealth of information in this item as it's intended to be both a project status update for the committee as well as the action item that you see in the recommendation. In the interest of time, if it's the board's or the committee's pleasure, I might suggest that we focus on the recommendation and the slides associated with that. If the board, or excuse me, if the committee does have specific questions for the project updates, we certainly have enough slides in there to be able to speak to those and circle back.
So in the interest of time, just this, why do we need to increase the fee for parole on this particular project? And Veronica, you're well suited to this. You've been on the project since the beginning.
Since 15.
So Veronica, I believe you've worked with your supervisor and manager to focus in on the key slides that will answer that specific question, correct?
Yes, correct. If Desiree, you can move to slide number 12. So this project, as he has previously presented, has its little hurdles along the way in regards to the implementation and the PowerPoint presentation. And one of the items or issues that we have encountered is delays. And those delays are, you can see on the slide here, there are delays on the pipeline and there are delays on the pump station too. So this particular slide is here for the delays that we encounter in the pipeline. As you can see, there was like issues that we had on getting the permits issued for the contractor. And there was also some changes right at the beginning of the project in regards to traffic control plans that have been previously approved by the regulatory entities, as well as some underground utilities that we found along the 3.5 miles of pipe that we installed. In addition to that, there was like some rains that affected our construction on Vista Montana that it resulted in a closure of that particular street for a while. We also worked some other items with the city to rearrange the slurry ceiling to still stay within the bid quantities, but accommodate the areas. And also another hurdle that we have had is the SCE redesign of the underground conduit that basically SCE had originally given us like plans. And then when we were at the field, there were some changes, one due to some erosion that we found, and also closeness to the tree that generated the production of another set of plans, in which we quickly, worked with them and were able to identify what needed to be done. But also, one of the things that we need to do is we need to get SCE to come into the master meter and power that particular facility. And we're kind of on a queue because of the recent LA fires that they are attending other emergencies. So we are just kind of waiting also in regards to moving forward, as well as closing some items with Palos Verdes State. Next slide. If we can move on to slide number 20. Please. Yeah, slide 20. So slide 20 concentrates on the delays that we encounter at the pump station. In similar fashion, we have some issues with permits, some underground utilities, some rain. And one of the biggest hurdles that we have had in regards to the completion of the project is the delivery of the switchboard. It's the only one piece that unfortunately didn't make it on time for the contractor to install. And while we are having discussions with the manufacturer and the vendor and the contractor, right now the manufacturer had advised us or notified that the switchboard is expected to arrive in June 12 of 2025, which means that it will be until then when we're going to be able to commission this facility, and which adds a significant delay in the project. And then following that, again, we need to work with SCE to come in and power the system in order to get the project tested and commissioned. So all of these delays, we can go to slide number 30, please. Leads us to what are the next steps on the project. So on the next steps, again, like we are completed with the installation of the pipeline and we're closing some items with Palos Verdes States and SCE. So we are hoping to close out this project in May 2025. And for the pump station, again, the contractor has been able to still, continue with the normal operation of the construction of the project. And there's some activities that we need to do around the parking lot, expected like around like 2025. And the delivery of the switchboard that comes in more towards summer. So you see a range on timing on the SCE energizing system and estimated close-up because again, SCE could be ready on day one when we call them to come and help us on energizing the system, or it could be a delay of a couple of months. So that's why you see a range on the estimation on the close-up. So as you can see, if you can go to slide number 32. This has had an effect on our construction management services. The construction management services are being performed by Carollo engineers. And we had, from the very beginning, we had a late start on the project, again, due to all these jurisdictional entities that we have to obtain permits, and which had different timelines on delivering those permits to us. However, once we started the project, again, we ran into, construction issues also. As we were implementing the project. There has been some turnover of the agencies that basically required to start working with a new set of people and starting a lot of those negotiations in regards to the plans and the designs. And all of this has resulted in additional timing to get the project started and completed. So if we can go to the next slide, please, slide number 33. This kind of summarizes the differential or the deltas on the duration of the pipeline. The pipeline has exceeded by an additional 140% on the timing, and the pump station for approximately 50% of the original timing. And this is just like to April 1st of 2025, which means that our construction management services who are performing inspection at the field have also exceeded the originally time that had originally been anticipated to perform these two projects. So we have been working with Carollo engineers on negotiating a number, and we are here to present that the Carollo is requesting an additional $511,727. Did I say that right? No, $511,727. Which kind of equates to 2,197 hours total for construction management, resident engineer, project controls, and inspector. And with this, if we can go to slide number 34. On this slide, this is just like a summary of what the original contract is, what the amendments have been done, and what we are proposing here as a change order. So the original project was awarded for $962,624.40. There was a 10% contingency approved. We have only made one amendment with the contingency of $18,849. And then the rest of the amendments that we have done are just for time extension, just like to get the project completed. Right now, we are requesting the amount of $511,737 to do amendment number 5. So what does this do to the budget? So you can follow me to the next slide. There's these columns here. You have your original budget that we have proposed for the project. And then on the middle column, where it says potential changes, you can see the additional construction management support services as noted in red as an additional cost. However, you can also see in parentheses a little bit more over than $1 million. What that line item is in the pipeline project, we had a big item for some soil conditions that fortunately we didn't have to utilize as we didn't find those soil conditions. So we're expecting a credit of that amount. So we also have some contingencies in our pipeline and our pump station that though we're still closing out the projects, we are still within those ranges. At this point, we're looking at the overall budget. You can see that we are at 16.4 million range on our total expenditures essentially. And because we have some contingencies still floating around in which we could still be getting some credit, we are not asking for any additional increase on budget. We're just like showing like, yes, maybe we anticipated more in one area and less in the other one, so we can work with the budgets that we had before and still, make the project, fit the original budget or get it to a location in which is acceptable in regards to that budget. So with that, the next page, please. I will read the recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to execute an amendment to agreement W317 with Carollo Engineers for additional construction management services in the amount of $511,727 for a revised total not to exceed amount of $1,551,763.65. I would take any questions at this point.
Thank you. Rest of the, go ahead.
Thank you, Albert. Question on the contingency funds. Why can't we use to make up for that 511,000?
So yes, if we can maybe go to the slide, the project budget and project cost, yes. So those contingencies were it was a 10% of the original pipeline and pump station bids. So they were mostly dedicated for any unforeseen situations that we could encounter at the field.
So this is not unforeseen? The 511,000, that's.
Well, it is, but that's construction management services. So on the construction management services, the original, if we go to the previous slide, we had awarded the project for $962,624.40. And the 10% contingency that was approved by the board was $96,000.
Yes.
So there was an amendment, so that's approximately maybe $72,000 that are still remaining in contingency. But again, the 511,000 exceeding, what is remaining on contingency. That's why we are asking for that amendment
Good.
approval from CM.
That's it, that's all the questions.
Okay, thank you. Engineer, no question? President Gray, do you have any comments, questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions and comments and kind of for the future, but overall, the project is gonna be finished in May. Correct?
Yes, we're waiting
That
for
includes the pump station.
the pipeline installation is completed and master meter. We're closing an item with Palos Verdes Estates and we are still working with SE to come in and power the master meter, which is, the window that we're working with them.
Monica, you have a slide, I believe, that has that note on there.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that the directors understand that with this switchgear delay, it won't be delivered until, I believe, June.
But my point is that for all practical purposes, the project is finished and we're waiting for a switchgear, so it doesn't mean that you're gonna have a CM sitting around. Should be.
Correct. There will be some downtime, I think, waiting for that final.
But we should be paying for that. It should be sent home. So, and the same thing on the pump station, because you have both the SE switchgear. If I recall that slide, it affected both parts of it. So most of the work that's being requested for additional reimbursement here is work that's already been done.
Yes.
And that's been incurred throughout the last, 6, 8, 9 months. So my question is, we've already incurred this. We're not looking to modify or amend this contract for additional work that's forthcoming.
Correct. So, yeah, so like if we go back to that slide, with construction management services agreement amendment, we were, I believe, having slide 33 on that.
And amendment number 1 had $18,000, and there was amendment number 2, 3, and 4. They had time only, they did not.
Yeah, but like the breakdown here for the 511, so basically for the pipeline, the amendment that is being requested corresponds to 336,000 and change. And yes, it's for those efforts that were additional to the regional labor hours that we were anticipating. And same thing, similar fashion with the pump station. You can see on that table, the second row from the bottom, where it says 1 month pump station. So that's basically more like an item that we are anticipating, like what happens if there is a delay because of SCE is not coming into the field? What does that mean? So we're kind of anticipating that in case that it occurs, that would be basically the anticipation.
But, so what we're looking at is basically, costs that have already been incurred.
Correct.
That you kind of negotiated back and forth with Corolla and said, well, you might be asking for too much, and you've come up with a negotiated, fee to make up whatever additional cost. So a couple of comments on that. Overall, the project is not that far behind schedule. Construction started in September, October of 23. And although the contract, the agreement with Corolla was signed in June of 23, they really probably shouldn't have started till actually construction started. And the pipeline was supposed to be 12 months, so that puts it in the September, October 24 timeframe. And the pump station was another 8 months, but it was assumed that it might start 12 months later. So that puts us at pretty much where we are. So overall, we're pretty good. So my comment is, my concern is that we've allowed this cost, and it's not a small amount. Basically 50% of the original contract plus the contingency that was allowed in the contract to be incurred, and now we're having to deal with it after the fact. But we did amend our contract 4 times prior to this to allow them, or to continue it and allow for more time. It would have been good at each one of those times to say, in addition to just a time increase, which we did not really consider the cost, was, and there is additional hours, and here's the cost, and been tracking it, as you did with the amendment number 1, which is 18,000, but then now we're $500,000 more into it, and we're really not in a position where we're gonna be able to say, no, we're not gonna approve this, because if we do, we'll end up with some kind of a fund. We've already negotiated this down to 511,000. So in the future, it would be nice, as we move forward, if there's gonna be these types of additions, it's one thing to have a small percentage, but it's another thing to have a 50% amendment after the fact. Come back.
Understood.
This poor practice to have to deal with this, and it's like, we don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Chair Alvarez. I would say that in this case, I know that staff has been working on this negotiation with the CM for quite some time, which has added to the time it's taken us to bring it before the board. We certainly wanted to make sure that these numbers were defensible and legitimate. And I don't know how many revisions of back and forth staff went with Corolla to get to this number, but I can assure you it was over the course of several weeks, if not months. And I feel very positive about the number they came to, that it is a legitimate number based on the circumstances of this project to date.
There's 2 things. It's that, and they wanted additional compensation for changes in their costs, because they quoted on their proposal costs or fees based on whatever their fee schedule was in 22, 3, or 22, 23, I should say, versus what their fees then changed over the course of the contract. So there's two things going on. There's more time and additional adjustment in fees. But in every one of those additional addendums for time, given the amount of money that we're looking at, should have been like addendum number 1. It's both time and fee. And I'd appreciate knowing that as we moved along. It would be better practice to do it that way instead of let it all accumulate to the end and it's like, okay, we're stuck. All right. Well, I'm not a happy camper, but I think we need to move this forward. You concur?
Yes.
Okay. All right, it's almost 5:00, Director Fave. If you need to leave, we understand.
I got a few more minutes. If we could do something in a few minutes.
All right, so we'll move on to item 5D, award of on-call pump and motor repair, rebuild and replacement services. Mr. Assistant General Manager.
Chair Alvarez, as you mentioned, this is for an award of on-call pump and motor replacement services. We have Jason Kung, Operations Analyst 2, to present the item today. And I would add that this is a contract that came before the board in similar form or fashion 2 years ago with a different style of recommendation built into it. Jason will get into all of that, but hopefully it looks familiar to the board members that have been here previously. Jason.
Thanks, Eric. In the interest of time, I've timed myself. It takes about 4 minutes, so should be good. This item is to request for the board's approval to award new initial 1-year on-call agreements for pump and motor repair, rebuild, and replacement services to Bonds Industrial Repair and Powers Brothers Machine, Inc., each starting at $250,000 with a combined not to exceed program amount of $1 million. West Basin's facilities rely on numerous rotating critical assets, including pumps, motors, blowers, and compressors, to maintain recycled water production, some of which are listed in attachment A or page 82 for reference. These assets occasionally require rebuilding or replacement, and rapid repairs are essential to avoiding service interruptions. Our current on-call contracts are set to expire in July of 2025, and available funds have already been fully committed. Staff issued a request for proposals on February 14th via West Basin's online bid system, in which over 4,000 vendors were notified. 2 proposals were received on March 14th, and after evaluating them based on pricing, past performance, capabilities, safety records, and references, staff is recommending awards to both firms. This dual award approach allows us to alternate assignments in a round-robin style, of course, time permitting, maintain flexibility, and ensure vendor availability for urgent tasks. We also recommend the continued use of the common law grading exception from competitive bidding for the overall on-call pump and motor program on a job order basis. This exemption allows West Basin to bypass the time-consuming process of seeking bids for each individual repair, which is often impractical when immediate action is needed. As we have done previously, West Basin's legal counsel first provided feedback on the solicitation process back in 2023, and so there is absolutely no ambiguity. Council recommended making findings to support the adoption of a common law exemption to competitive bidding limited to this job order contract, to allow for West Basin and its contractors to act swiftly for urgent pump and motor work. These findings are referred to as the Graydon exception to competitive bidding after the Graydon v. Pasadena Redevelopment Agency case in 1980. The exemption permits job order contracting for repair work that must be promptly secured before competitive bidding could be exhausted. Here in this case, the district's procurement strictly complied with the district's policy governing the procurement of repair and maintenance work, which is a competitive process, and further procurement through competitive bidding for each job order would not produce a meaningful public benefit beyond what the existing process has already achieved. With that, I'll read the recommendation and answer any questions after, which is that staff recommends that the board, 1, find consistent with its legislative judgment as follows. These job order agreements for rapid maintenance and repair of pumps and motors for all West Basin facilities were competitively procured. B, individual public works competitive bidding for each job order in these agreements will work in incongruity and is unavailing as affecting the final result. C, individual public works competitive bidding for each job order in these agreements would not produce any advantage. And D, it is practically impossible to obtain what is required and to observe such form for each job order in these agreements. And 2, authorize the general manager to enter into agreements with Bonds Industrial Repair and Powers Brothers Machine, Inc. for the procurement of on-call pump and motor repair services for initial one-year term at a starting amount of $250,000 each, with an option to increase funds for a total not to exceed program amount of $1 million.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Pavay, any questions on this? Huh? No? Okay, Director Leo?
No, go for it.
Director Gray?
No, thank you.
Okay, just for clarification, basically it's a task order contract. And initially, each is gonna be authorized up to 250,000, that's 500,000. And then each will get a second task order for 250,000. Or one, may get two additional task orders for 250,000. Because it's up to $1 million. I just want clarification how we get to the million.
It can be evenly distributed if it works out well, which is more likely what we'll end up doing. But we want to leave the remaining 500,000 as an incentive for the vendors to continue to do good work and have a good relationship with the district.
Like that 500,000 could also one vendor. It's not intended to be, it's just whoever bids on it.
Correct.
So that leads to my second question, which is, in order to keep it competitive for any one task order, will you ask each contractor to give you a bid?
So it depends on the case of the task order. I would look at each individual task order, not so much as $250,000, but
Right, some amount.
right. Some amount under the 250 that would bring us up to the 250. If time allows, we will definitely approach both. But if it's a little bit time critical, the idea is to act quickly. So we'll do a round robin style. Contractor A gets to go first, which is in this case, Vaughn's Industrial Repair. They had the lower dollar amount. So we'll give them the first task order. The next one will go to Powers Brothers. If they are both free, we'll do round robin style like that. If one of the contractors says, hey, I'm too busy, then we'll go to the next one. But that's in the case that time does not allow us to properly bid on both.
Jason, you're referring specifically to emergency type activities or critical, plant shutdown related type.
Short of an emergency,
If I
we
mean,
will basically bid out. In other words, between the two, I don't mean bid out as we normally would put out a public bid, but we would ask for two prices and then go with a lower
We
price.
will obtain task order proposals.
correct. And I would not limit it just to critical or emergency. Some of these task orders, the full scope of the task order, it might not be known at the time of retrieval of the pumper motor. We'll have to take it apart and do a proper assessment to figure out exactly what needs to be repaired. And so at that point, it's already at a contractor A's, shop.
But prior to that, unless it's an emergency, you can have contractor A and contractor B each give you price, and then they can dismantle the motor and say, well, we found more or less problem.
Correct. We do have a standard dollar amount for the retrieval and reinstallation of a pump. And that we do know between the two contractors, right? It's the crane rental, the amount of hours it's going to take to remove, if it's a complicated motor, if it's in a weird spot or something like that. So we do know generally how much it's going to cost between both of them in terms of hours. And we have set hourly rates between both of them. It's really when they take it apart and they figure out like, well, you need X amount of bearings replaced, the shaft needs to be replaced. That's
Fully understand.
right.
Once you take it apart, you might find that I just went through this. Okay? So, but up to the point where they get to that, prior to that point, you can't ask both of them to give you a price. And then once they get into it, then you'll have to manage it.
Yes, of course. Yes, we can ask both of them.
So that would be the one way to keep costs, reasonable and know that they're always competing.
Chair Alvarez, if I could use the terminology of our pending new operations contract. If we have planned maintenance, that gives us the time to then put forward a request for a task order proposal, obtain those costs, and make a selection on which firm to use. If it's a unplanned maintenance activity that requires immediate action, then we can look at who got the last work and who's available, and it'll be a slightly different criteria than taking the time associated with obtaining pricing from both.
If it's an emergency, I agree with it. But if it's not an emergency, then you're back to your prior. So as long as we have that understanding that that's how we will keep these costs at least competitive, we're okay with that.
You know, you just, I have a question since
Go ahead.
you bring that up. Now, when it comes to like the bid specifications for these motors, right? Is each contractor given the same, this is the same bid specifications? If you've worked on these motors before, whether it's Siemens or Square D, whatever it is, are they given those bid specs, when it comes to working on these type of motors?
Absolutely. That's a great question. We do provide the necessary information for each contractor to understand the scenario that they're going to enter, how heavy the motor is, how it's going to come out. So we do provide the nameplates of the motor or the pump. Just give them an idea of, here's the size of it. Here's how many trailers you might need if you need a heavy load permit or something like that. So we do provide the information.
Okay.
In fact, Director, I believe there's an attachment in the memo which just shows a list of the critical pumps that are associated with the plant. There is a larger list of the less critical assets, but during the proposal process, these teams were provided that list so they understand what equipment they might be asked to.
Okay. Good. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, so, we'll move this item forward.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then we will move on to item 5E, award of construction services contract for the solids handling improvements project. Mr. Assistant General Manager, please introduce that one.
Chair Alvarez, as you mentioned, this title is related to the construction services contract for the solids handling improvements project. We have John Benner again, presenting on this topic, Engineer 2. And with that, I'll pass it over to John.
Eric, good afternoon again, directors. So I'll be presenting item 5E, recommending the award of a construction contract for solids handling system improvements project. Begins on page 83 of your board packet. We'll be beginning today with the presentation on page 88. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, this project aims to rehabilitate the 30-year-old solids handling filter presses over the next couple of years. These presses are used to process between 80 and 100 tons of solid sludge every day, and it's a critical part of these. The poor condition of these presses has caused rapidly increasing operations and maintenance costs in recent years. So last fiscal year, the system costed the district approximately $7.5 million in operations and maintenance. Staff have undertaken several studies over the years, and they have shown that the refurbishment of these presses is the most cost-effective option, with estimated savings of up to $3.6 million per year. So we're now at the end of the design phase, which began in August 2023. Next slide, please. This slide shows a chart. We've seen it quite a few times before, but it depicts the net present value of doing nothing against the proposed refurbishment, which is option B, the blue line there, over a period of 15 years. The table to the right there shows the anticipated savings of undertaking the refurbishment. So as you can see, that initial capital expenditure over the next couple of years will be reduced, is offset by the O&M savings each passing year, starting in the second year of construction and then upon its completion. Our calculations show that this refurbishment will save approximately $3.6 million per year in O&M savings for the district. That's an additional $300,000 every month that the system remains in its current condition. So it's anticipated that the break-even point will occur at some time in 2029, with these savings leading to a net positive after that point. Next slide, please. This slide depicts the overall changes. As usual on this, changes from the last time staff presented are in red. So the main thing to note here is that the construction cost came in $200,000 higher than the engineer's estimate. So the total project cost in the top left there and the construction cost in the bottom right higher by $200,000 than last time we presented. In addition, the contract award for the staff presented today was pushed by a month. The contractors who were bidding on the project requested an additional month or additional couple of weeks, 3 weeks to put together their bids. So this has pushed that anticipated project completion in the bottom right out to December 2026. Next slide, please. So this slide shows what the rehabilitation will entail. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of it. But effectively, this slide shows the ancillary equipment that we'll be refurbishing. There's a couple of new additions here as well. We're putting in the scope of the project. So the first is the addition of pH probes in the sludge conditioning tanks, or 4 sludge conditioning tanks. Currently, the operators manually dip sample cups into the tanks to calculate the pH of the mixture. And so these pH probes allow them to see pH values for those sludge tanks in real time on their workstations. The second addition is the addition of a truck scale beneath the presses. So currently we rely on the haulage contractor providing us with weight tickets as evidence of how much they haul away. The contractor is currently invoicing us around $200,000 per month to haul away the solid sludge. So we decided to put in a truck scale underneath the presses there so that we can validate and verify those tickets. Next slide, please. And then this slide just shows the work we'll be doing to the presses themselves. So the last slide was ancillary equipment. This is the actual presses. There's a lot here, but effectively we'll be replacing all the hydraulics, instrumentation, safety components, and we'll be refurbishing the 280 steel plates to the two presses. So all in all, the aim of this refurbishment is to significantly increase both the efficiency and reliability of this sludge management system, which we estimate will save the district an estimated $3.6 million per year. Next slide, please. This slide details the anticipated critical path, the construction schedule. So we anticipate issuing the notice to proceed in June with the installation of pre-procured steel sludge conditioning tanks taking place first. Then we'll install a temporary dewatering system at the end of this calendar year that will enable us to take those presses offline, fully offline for their rehabilitation over an 11-month period. And then in summer of next year, we'll install all of the pumps and then aim to commission the rehabilitated system at the end of 2026. So once the system's up and running again, we'll decommission and remove that temporary dewatering system. Next slide, please. So onto the actual action item today. Staff advertised for construction bids back in January and received 2 bids last month. The lowest responsive bidder was Kiewit Infrastructure West with a bid of $10,905,000, which is pretty close to the engineer's estimate of $10,640,000. Since we received the bids, the R2 Build bid has been deemed not responsive as they failed to comply with our small and local business advertisement policy. However, as they aren't the lowest bidder, this doesn't affect staff's recommendation today. Kiewit are utilizing Mass Electric as their electrical subcontractor. Both organizations are union signatories, with Kiewit being signatory to unions of several trades, including laborers, carpenters, masons, and electricians, while Mass Electric are a member of IBEW Local 11. Next slide, please. This slide depicts the anticipated expenditure on this project in each fiscal year. As always, changes from last time we presented are in red. As you can see, the construction total has changed. As I mentioned before, that's because the lowest construction bid was $200,000 higher than the engineer's estimate. So those costs have gone up by $200,000. And then the red in the pre-procurement row there is due to staff developing a more realistic distribution of those pre-procurement costs. So the total pre-procurement cost hasn't changed, but the distribution across the fiscal years has changed. As we've received shop drawings and other submittals and have a more realistic view of the timeline for those. This fiscal year, we anticipate spending approximately $560,000, with the bulk of the project expenditure falling into next year's fiscal budget. As always, we always show on the bottom right there the amount of refinery funding that the district has already received for the project and how this affects the actual expenditure funded by West Basin. Next slide, please. This slide is one we present every time. It shows the total anticipated and received refinery funding under the current agreements we have with those refineries. So it effectively shows a breakdown of the refinery contributions total that we showed on the last slide. As there's been no changes here since last time, I'll move on. Next slide, please. And so that brings me to the recommendation for you today, that the board authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with Kiewit Infrastructure West Company for construction services in the amount of $10,905,000 plus a 10% contingency for a total amount of $11,995,000. With that, do our presentation. I have to take any questions.
Thank you.
Chair, do you need a vote? And then I can take off and you ask questions after?
No, if you need to go, I can
So you don't need me to vote on this? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Stan.
Right, Director Neal. President Gray. They have this spoken. President Gray. All right, let's just talk about the cost of this project then. To start. So right now, we're basically committing to another $12 million.
Sorry.
Right now, we're basically committing to another $12 million.
10,905,000 for this contract.
Plus 10% contingency, and you'll probably use it all. So let's be honest and call it what it is, 12 million. Is this gonna be all funded or not? I don't quite follow the funding.
So
I know that we have some money coming in, 2.6 million from Chevron and Torrance, and that there's additional funding with the negotiation of the agreement. And then, so what, maybe you don't have it today, and it should be included in the board package if it's not there. A much more detailed breakdown of all the funding sources and when that funding is actually coming in, if it's not here now.
Yeah, Chair Alvarez, we can bring that back to the board. On the item B. In fact, we'll work with Wendy O'Kelly, the new CFO, as she's developing the budget slides for the upcoming workshop. I believe the board saw in workshop number 1 that this year we had a little bit more money available for PAYGO funding of CIP projects than we anticipated. And so we'll work with Wendy to make sure that the finances are a little more detailed.
Okay, but we're gonna be considering this at the board before our next workshop.
Correct. So
So
what I
it will
would
be
propose to do
for the
is,
board package, you will have a much more detailed
correct,
financial breakdown than is in the current staff report.
correct. That's what I would propose, is that we will provide you with a more detailed breakdown in this board item at next week's board.
Okay,
Board action calendar with no committee
what's
recommendation.
that now?
Board action calendar without committee recommendation.
It's gonna be that way, yeah. It would have been that way in any case.
Yes, just making sure.
Okay. All right, just leave it at that. If we can get a real breakdown of the cost of the project, and then well, one last thing, it's just the amount of time we're talking about. Basically, this is gonna take almost 2 years to finish.
but yeah, we estimate December.
And I think you guys did a pre-construction walkthrough with for the project. So there was a lot of discussion about timing at that pre-con.
But the pre-bid detail.
Well, pre-con, I should say pre-bid, I apologize.
Yeah, there wasn't that much discussion of timing. Most of the contractors seems.
No, from the staff, you guys didn't.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
An
absolutely.
issue of how critical this is.
Absolutely. And we also made them very aware that in the proposed contract, there's liquidated damages amounts in there of $6,000 a day that equate to the amount. It's the expenditure of the temporary dewatering rental plus additional haulage costs and some other additional costs to be incurred if the project was to be.
Okay. So on that particular issue, they understand that they're gonna be on the hook.
Yeah, we made that very clear in the agreement.
I don't see a lot of, I'm sure that they'll come up with something, but I really don't see a lot of potential for unknowns here. I mean, the unit is the unit, it's out there, it's take it apart and rebuild it. Okay. And we'll move forward, but without a committee recommendation.
Understood.
Okay, so then we will move on to the information calendar. And the first item, 6A, is a progress update for the Title 22 filters 3, 4, and 6 rehabilitation and replacement project. So, Mr. Assistant General Manager.
Chair Alvarez, today this presentation will be provided by Orlando Rodriguez, Engineering Supervisor, and he will provide a status progress update on the titled project.
I don't know if we're still dealing with the interest of time, or do you want me to go through the whole presentation or just kind of skip?
Well, Richard Fave's on his way.
Okay,
He's gonna run late, but
all right, good. I'll
you
still,
can do a quick
I'll
recap.
do a quick,
So,
okay.
yeah, we don't want to be here till 8 o'clock either.
I'll skip ahead to just for the interest of time, but you can find a copy. Thank you, Eric, by the way. You can find a copy of the staff report on page 100 of the agenda packet. And then, but for now, if you could turn to page 103 for the presentation itself. But like I mentioned, Desiree, could we go to slide number 4? I just go to the current project. I know we've talked about the project several times, so I'll kind of skip the background a little bit, but there you go. Thank you. So if you recall, in August of 2023, the E&O committee approved an alternative, basically to perform work on 3 filters and also the crack repairs on filters 7 and 8 on those north walls.
Bless you.
And so from those 3 filters, there were 11 filters total that needed work. So we, the committee recommended doing basically 3 filters each fiscal year as we completed all of them. We issued a bid solicitation for construction services of December 2023. And then contract was awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bid of Tharsos on January 31st, 2024. So following the execution of the agreement and their insurance verification between Tharsos and Wood Basin, we issued an MPP in August of 2024. And the first item here that we did was basically dimension verification inside the filter basins. We needed that to essentially give that information to the underdrain lateral manufacturer, AWI. These are all custom made under drains, so they're basically made to fit. And this was a long lead item, so those under drains.
Would you call Tony and me? Because I'm walking out now. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so the under drains were actually delivered December of last year, so it took about 5 to 6 months to manufacture and deliver on site to ECL. Next slide, please, Desiree. So just here showing a brief overview on the left of the filter basins 3, 4, and 6, along with filters 7 and 8, both north walls. So the work that has been completed now is we've done underdrain installation. And I also like to add that we installed the media on filters 4 and 6. So those are actually completed. We're doing some final testing right now and commissioning of those 2 filters. We've done crack repairs inside the filter basin for 4 and 6 as well. Actually, when I wrote this, we hadn't done 3, but 3 is complete now as well. We've done resurfacing of the backwash concrete troughs for 4, 6, and 3 now. And then also done the crack repairs on filter number 8, that north wall that I previously discussed. So right now, currently work that is pending is the underdrain lateral installation for filter number 3, also the crack repairs on the north wall of filter 7, and then media installation for filter number 3, and then the final startup and commissioning for that filter, and then some final punch list items as well. Next slide, please. So here, I just want to kind of go over some pictures here. To the left, you'll see the contractor was essentially delivering the material inside the filter basins using the crane here. And then that was, they were carrying over the underdrain laterals. And then to the right there is the kind of final crack repairs of that north wall. I don't know if you recall, but those cracks were essentially going vertically pretty far down, about 8 to 10 feet. So those are completely, we epoxy injected those, did restuccoing of the wall. So it's nice and finished now, so complete. Next slide. And here I'd like to just kind of go over, this is filter number 4, number 6. So to the left, this is before we remove the underdrain laterals at the bottom, and then prior to resurfacing of those concrete troughs. This was taken April 2nd, and then to the right, there is actually the other filter that we had completed. So you'll see the resurfacing there, the big difference there. You don't see any of the aggregate that's exposed. And then also the new underdrain laterals at the bottom there. So we're doing some final touch-up work. So that's what each 3, 4, and 6 will look like on the right once we're completed, minus the media that we'll be installing. Actually has been installed now, but it's not shown here at the time. Next slide, please. So the next steps for the project is, first, I'd like to discuss like the design services. So Corolla, we procure their services through our on-call contract, design contract. And one of the things that we're considering here is essentially to continue with Corolla And we kind of revised the construction bid package that we issued. Nothing really is going to change in terms of the bid package itself. We're gonna, potentially do the next filter. So we are gonna do some small tweaks to the design, just lessons learned that we learned in the field. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. So it's either we stick with Corolla and, potentially reduce our costs by doing that, or we put out another formal RFP for design services to, get another design consultant on board. So that's one of the options that we have for design services, either continue with Corolla or put out a formal RFP. Second is the program that was originally recommended. The committee did recommend doing 3 filters each fiscal year. One of the things that we're considering now is with the converted booster pump station, is maybe spreading out our expenditures over more fiscal years. So instead of 3, maybe doing 2 filters a year. So there would be 8 total, so it would essentially add 1 more year to the overall program of the project itself. So we're considering that as well. And that, last but not least here, some of the things that we learned during this project is there's some equipment inside that we would like to essentially replace during this time. Since we have the filters drained completely, we noticed that like some of the drain valves need to be replaced and so forth. So we want to incorporate some of that work into the next version of the project. So just taking advantage, maybe some economies of scale here that, we have everything out to doing some other work since we're in there already and shutting it down. Next slide, please. And just here, just kind of a overview of the current program. So essentially this next fiscal year, we would do 3 filters again. Right, and then after that, fiscal year 26, 27, another 3, and then 27, 28, the final 2. And the potential program here would just kind of spread it out through another year here. We're doing 2 filters a year, just spreading out our expenditure. So adding another fiscal year essentially for another 2 filters, 2, 2, and 2. And we would leave the converted filters at the end. We would focus our efforts right now on train 1, which is 1 through 10, get all of those done, and then switch over to train 2 after we completed the first set of filters on train 1. And the next slide. That's it. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Director Neal. President Green. I have questions, but I'm not gonna ask you a lot of questions, but I'd like to see if you come back, it's kind of a follow-up to this presentation, either next month or the following month, so that we can kind of keep abreast of it. And a couple of things. I don't have any issues with Corolla. I don't know if any other board members do. But I'm assuming you will be renegotiating or negotiating additional fee with Corolla.
Yeah, I started the process already for this kind of revision. We're looking at about maybe 20 to 30K to do the next version of the bid package.
Is one of the things, since they have been on this project now for a long time.
Yes.
They've been given quite a few little task orders. When you bring it back next month or whenever for information, if you could fill in, here's what Corolla's scope to date has been, how much we've spent, plus moving forward in the next phase is what the additional fee will be. And then, so we're talking about 2 additional filters moving forward with that. And it's gonna be done sequentially and being involved in this for the next 4 years. So if you can just talk about those 2 filters in a little bit more detail than what you did today. On the scope and the expanded scope, now that you've already been underneath and said we're gonna be replacing some other things, etc. And when do you anticipate needing to go out to bid on this one? For the first, for the next,
Well,
so if we bring it back for information item next month, what was the time frame here?
next fiscal year, I would have to go back. Well, it depends what we decide to do, if we stick with Corolla or not. If we have to put out a formal RFP.
Well, assume you're gonna stick with Corolla. So that's gonna cause more delays and
Right.
unless other board members, I don't know. Director Deere, they're using Corolla, would you, and Corolla has been the engineer on this, I think they won. Would you have an objection to continuing to use them?
No.
I mean, you only have 2 out of 5 right now.
Yeah,
But. I
I would
think
anticipate, I would say September, maybe October, where we would put this out to bid again. Like for the next 2. And incorporating, at that point, we wouldn't have incorporated or finished the next
So-
reading.
when you bring it back next month or the month after, you guys know how much time you'll need to address these questions. They're not that much, but there's some additional information. Then bring back, here's the potential schedule.
Chair Alvarez, if I could clarify just on that potential schedule, that's simply for the next 2, not necessarily for the.
Right, for the next 2, because we're moving this on an annual basis.
The additional clarity is needed, Orlando?
Right, so either next month or the month after, it sounds like there's time for bringing it back for additional information and discussion.
We'll regroup and discuss.
Okay,
Since
all right, so we will move on, and if we can have just a quick update on the monthly engineering operations report, unless Director Deere would like to waive that. If you don't need it, we can adjourn and,
pretty clear here, right? Isn't it?
okay, in that case, we'll forego the updates on the monthly annual report, and we, unless there's any other comments.
if I could, Director, just real quick, is there any single critical item that the committee should be aware of from the update?
I think we're okay. There's a lot of updates on the operations side of things and on the several projects, the elevator and some of the other things, projects that we didn't talk about today in the staff report and the company presentation. Unless somebody has any questions.
Fairly detailed report this month, so
Right.
if you have any additional questions after, please ask staff.
Okay, so with that, we are adjourned. Did it in time, 5:30.